The West Asia war has snowballed into a full-blown oil war that's now threatening the whole world. Donald Trump warns the US will destroy the South Pars gas field if Iran hits Qatar's LNG facilities again. The threat comes after Iranian missiles struck key gas sites in Qatar and elsewhere in the Gulf following a major attack on Iran's own gas field by Israel. After tit-for-tat attacks by Israel and Iran on some of the world's biggest oil and gas facilities located in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia threatens to join the war against Iran, says our patience is limited. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the Iran war will end on our terms, insists it won't spiral into another 2003 Iraq war-style forever war. Former US counter-terrorism chief Joe Kent, who quit this week in protest against the Iran war, says there was no intel suggesting an imminent Iranian attack on the US and that Trump attacked Iran under pressure from Israel. He adds Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had restrained Iran's nuclear program and Ali Larijani, who was killed in Israeli strikes this week, was ready for nuclear talks. Iranian drones seen hovering over a military base near the White House, triggering high alert. The base houses top military leadership and residences of key officials, including Marco Rubio and Pete Hegseth. Meanwhile, the Pentagon seeks another $200 billion for the Iran war. The US Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard says Pakistan poses among the biggest nuclear threats to the United States. Bloodbath on the stock markets amid the West Asia war. BSE Sensex crashes by 2,500 points. 14 lakh crore rupees of investors' money wiped out in a single day. Meanwhile, HDFC Bank Chairman Atanu Chakraborty quits, flagging ethics concerns in the bank's functioning, triggering further panic on the Lal Street. And the much-awaited Ranveer Singh starrer Dhurandhar, The Revenge, releases in theatres across India, riding massive fan frenzy. Hello and welcome to the Times of India. You're watching Headlines at 8 with me, Neha Khanna. Our top story. The world is watching a dangerous new phase in the West Asia war unfold, one where energy itself has become a battlefield. What began as a military confrontation between US, Israel and Iran has now spiraled into a full-blown oil war. On Wednesday, Iran and Israel traded strikes for the first time on facilities linked to the production of fossil fuel energy, raising fears of further global shock. Energy has now become a weapon of war. Earlier, the US and Israel had held back from targeting Iran's energy production facilities in the Gulf. Even when US President Donald Trump attacked Kharg Island, the hub for 90% of Iran's oil exports, only military sites were targeted. That changed on Wednesday after Israel struck the South Pars gas field, which Iran shares with Qatar. Iran retaliated by firing drones and missiles at the oil giant Aramco's Samref refinery in Saudi Arabia, as well as gas facilities in Qatar and the UAE, marking a dangerous turning point in the ongoing war. The South Pars gas field, the world's largest, is the backbone of global LNG supplies, including India's. Its importance could be gauged by the immediate spike in oil and gas prices after the Israeli strike. Trump was quick to distance the United States from the attack on this particular gas field, claiming it was solely an Israeli operation. He wrote on Truth Social, and I quote, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar was in no way, shape or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that this was going to happen. No more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case, Qatar, in which instance the United States of America, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. That's the threat from Donald Trump. With the world already grappling with crude oil supply disruptions due to Iran blocking ship movements through the Strait of Hormuz, any damage to production facilities itself is likely to have a years-long impact. The South Pars gas field contains 1,800 trillion cubic feet of gas, enough to meet the world's needs for 12 to 13 years. For Tehran, South Pars is at the heart of its energy supply. About 80% of Iran's electricity is generated from this gas field. However, what complicates the issue is that this gas field is not Iran's alone. Iran shares it with Qatar, a US ally, and the world's largest LNG producer. Qatar's section of the field is known as the North Field, from which large volumes of LNG are exported to global markets. While North Field has not been impacted in this particular strike, Iran retaliated by firing missiles at Doha's Ras Laffan LNG facility. Qatar Energy, which manages this facility, had partially closed it previously after Iranian strikes. The developments are likely to have a significant bearing on India, one of the world's largest LNG buyers. For this, India relies heavily on Qatar. In fact, around 80 to 85% of India's LPG comes from Qatar and Saudi Arabia. A prolonged disruption will put supply chains under strain. Not only Qatar, Iran also targeted the UAE's Habshan gas facility and Bab field, though most of the missiles were intercepted by air defense systems. Habshan is one of the world's largest gas processing facilities. Its seriousness could be gauged by the UAE's rare rebuke for Iran, calling the strike a terrorist attack that threatens global energy security. Tehran has also vowed to strike oil and gas facilities in Saudi Arabia. Hours later, Aramco's Sanref refinery in the Red Sea port of Yanbu was hit, marking a serious escalation. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively shut, Yanbu port in the Red Sea is one of the two major export outlets for crude oil out of the Gulf. Two oil refineries in Kuwait were also targeted, including the Mina Al Ahmadi facility, one of the largest in the Middle East. The tit-for-tat strikes on gas facilities have global implications. It is well known that energy disruptions affect fuel prices and supply chains, which then impact economies. And the Gulf remains a major energy corridor for Europe, Asia, and India. The effect was visible immediately. Brent crude oil prices surged to $110 a barrel, while the benchmark gas price also jumped by 6%. In the United States, gas prices hit their highest level since September 2023. Energy infrastructure is now firmly in the crosshairs, and the pattern of the conflict indicates that economic warfare is now a central strategy. It signals a dangerous shift in the ongoing war, and energy itself has become a battlefield. No one seems to have been spared. The war has clearly engulfed the whole world.
U.S. President Donald Trump has asked Israel not to attack the South Pars gas field in the Persian Gulf, claiming that Washington, D.C. did not know about the strikes that burned the facility earlier and sparked Iranian retaliation against America's Gulf allies. In a Truth Social post, Trump said, Israel, out of anger for what has taken place in the Middle East, has violently lashed out at a major facility known as South Pars gas field in Iran. A relatively small section of the hull has been hit. The United States knew nothing about this particular attack, and the country of Qatar, was in no way, shape, or form involved with it, nor did it have any idea that it was going to happen. Unfortunately, Iran did not know this, or any of the pertinent facts pertaining to the South Pars attack, and unjustifiably and unfairly attacked a portion of Qatar's LNG gas facility. No more attacks will be made by Israel pertaining to this extremely important and valuable South Pars field unless Iran unwisely decides to attack a very innocent, in this case Qatar, in which instance the United States of America, with or without the help or consent of Israel, will massively blow up the entirety of the South Pars gas field at an amount of strength and power that Iran has never seen or witnessed before. I do not want to authorize this level of violence and destruction because of the long-term implications that it will have on the future of Iran, but if Qatar's LNG is again attacked, I will not hesitate to do so. The Israeli military Wednesday attacked Iran's South Pars natural gas field, part of the world's largest such gas resource and a pillar of the country's energy supplies. Facilities associated with the gas field near Asaloya on Iran's Gulf coastline were on fire on Wednesday, and Iran had vowed to attack energy facilities in other Gulf countries in retaliation. This is a firm and clear warning to the criminals who attacked a part of Iran's fuel and energy infrastructures in the south of the country. As a result of this action, the fuel, energy, and gas infrastructures that are the source of the invasion will be burned and reduced to ashes at the earliest opportunity. We declare to the cowardly and aggressive army of the criminal America and the barbaric and child-killing Zionist regime that you will have no choice but to throw your soldiers into the water and throw your dignity into the wind. The throats of your commanders and soldiers are under the boots of the warriors of Islam.
In a major escalation, Iran unleashed unprecedented strikes on Gulf energy sites in the region after Israel targeted the Islamic Republic's South Pars gas field. Iranian forces fired missiles at Qatar and Saudi Arabia energy hubs. Saudi Arabia said Iran attacked 2 of its refineries in Riyadh. Reports suggest large fires were observed in Riyadh's industrial zone, opposite of Aramco's refinery. 2 huge explosions from Iranian missile impacts were also reported. What followed was a sharp reaction from Riyadh. Saudi Foreign Minister Prince Faisal said Iran shattered the trust they had before the attack. The top Saudi diplomat said Iran must review its misjudgments, warning that such attacks will not bring any gains. He further claimed that Iran had been prepared in advance for these attacks.
Amid Iran's continued attacks on the energy facilities of its Middle Eastern neighbors, Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud has warned Tehran that tolerance of his country and other Gulf states is limited, saying the strikes are a blatant attempt at blackmail. Riyadh also called on Tehran to immediately recalculate its strategy, saying Saudi Arabia and other neighboring states have very significant capacities and capabilities that could be drawn on should they choose to do so. The threats came after Saudi Arabia said it intercepted and destroyed 4 ballistic missiles that were launched towards Riyadh just before the regional and Islamic foreign ministers met in the Saudi capital. Al Saud said, "For me, it was clear that the attack today was timed with this meeting in order to attempt to intimidate those present, to send out the message that Iran will not stop." In the harshest comments to come out of the Gulf Kingdom, in nearly 3 weeks of war, Al Saud accused Iran of premeditated hostile actions against its neighbors, both directly and via an array of regional proxies, which he urged Tehran to rein in. He said the level of accuracy in some of this targeting, you can see it in our neighbors as well as the kingdom, indicates that this is something that was premeditated, pre-planned, pre-organized and well thought out. The Saudi leader stressed that the Gulf states are not intimidated by the Iranian attacks. He said, "We were not in any way convinced that Iran can be a legitimate partner when it behaves like this. What little trust there was has been completely shattered." The Saudi foreign minister said, Iran's justifications for targeting its neighbors are unconvincing. He also threatened Tehran with counterattacks if Iran continues its strikes. He said, "I think it's important for the Iranians to understand that the kingdom, but also its partners who have been attacked and beyond, has very significant capacities and capabilities that they could bring to bear should they choose to do so. The patience that is being exhibited is not unlimited." Saudi Arabia's warning came after Iran intensified its attacks on its Gulf Arab neighbors' energy infrastructure, setting Qatari, Emirati and Saudi oil and gas facilities on fire as it hit back following an Israeli attack on its main natural gas field. A major escalation in the Middle East war that has sent global fuel prices soaring. Qatar, a key source of natural gas for world markets, said firefighters had put out a blaze at the world's largest LNG facility after it had been hit by Iranian missile attacks. Authorities in Abu Dhabi said the country had been forced to shut down operations at its Habshan gas facility and Bab field, calling Iranian overnight attacks on the sites a dangerous escalation of the war. Saudi Arabia also reported downing Iranian drones targeting its natural gas facilities overnight, and authorities in Abu Dhabi said it had been forced to shut down its Habshan gas facility and Bab field after interceptions over the sites.
Oil giant Saudi Aramco's SAM-REF refinery in the Red Sea port of Yanbu was targeted in an aerial attack on Thursday, an industry source said, adding there was minimal impact after other attacks on energy facilities in Qatar and the UAE in response to U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iranian energy installations. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry claimed that they intercepted and destroyed 8 drones. The interceptions took place in the capital, Riyadh, and the eastern province. The attacks on Saudi refinery came hours after the kingdom's foreign minister blasted Iran for unleashing attacks on its Gulf neighbors and backing armed proxies in the region.
So what I care about now is that the attacks on my country and on my neighboring countries that are not involved in this conflict end. That's all I'm interested in. And we're going to use every lever we have, political, economic, diplomatic, and elsewise, to get these attacks to stop. That's what I care about. Any re-engagement with Iran, this conflict, will end at some point. But I have to tell you, what little trust there was before has completely been shattered. Has been shattered on multiple levels. First, because Iran knows that most of the countries in the room today worked very hard to support diplomatic outcomes. Also, because we were quite clear with Iran that we would not be combatants in any confrontation that came. Not only that, that we would not allow our facilities to be used to target Iran, that would be restricted to self-defense.
Additionally, an Iranian drone reportedly hit an operational unit at the Mina al-Ahmadi refinery in Kuwait. According to the Kuwait news agency, the Kuwait Petroleum Corporation said the drone attack triggered a limited fire but did not result in any injuries, adding the blaze was dealt with according to the highest safety standards. In another incident, 2 drones hit a U.S. military camp near the airport in Iraq's capital, Baghdad. The drone strike was reportedly carried out in retaliation to several deadly attacks on sites belonging to the paramilitary Popular Mobilization Forces. The umbrella group includes factions that are aligned with Iran, the report added. In another incident, fire broke out after a drone hit naval base in southern Iraq. According to an Al Jazeera report, the drone crashed into a water treatment station at the Qasr naval base near the border with Kuwait. Iran has intensified attacks on Gulf nations following the killings of high-profile Iranian leaders and officials.
In a stunning twist that has shaken the US's security narrative, former Trump aide and ex-counterterrorism chief Joe Kent, who resigned just a couple of days ago, came out swinging after his resignation, dismantling the very foundation of the Iran war justification. In his first explosive interview, Kent declared that Iran's assassinated Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had actually been restraining Iran's nuclear ambitions, not accelerating them. He went further, flatly rejecting claims that Tehran was anywhere close to building a nuclear weapon. According to Kent, there was no credible intelligence of any imminent, large-scale Iranian attack on the United States, no 9/11 style or Pearl Harbor style threat, directly contradicting the narrative pushed by Donald Trump and his administration as justification for going to war with Iran. Kent has alleged that the United States was pulled into the conflict under pressure, pointing a finger squarely at Israel's influence in shaping American strategy in the Middle East. In a striking moment during his interview with Tucker Carlson, Kent agreed that the so-called imminent threat may not have come from Iran at all, but from the anticipation of Israeli action. He described Iran's approach as calculated and restrained, warning that the assassination of key figures like Khamenei could backfire, fueling unity within Iran rather than weakening it. Kent even characterized Ali Larijani, who was killed this week, as a negotiator open to dialogue, hinting that diplomatic off-ramps may have existed before the war actually began. Meanwhile, Trump dismissed Kent's assertions outright, branding him weak on security and doubling down on his stance that Iran posed a real and present danger. At the heart of America's power corridors, a major security scare unfolded just miles from the White House as unidentified drones were detected hovering over the highly sensitive Fort Leslie J. McNair, the base home to top military leadership and residences of key officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, was thrust into high alert after multiple drone sightings in a single night triggered emergency reviews. With the military base located barely 2 miles from the nerve center of U.S. power, the breach exposed a troubling vulnerability, prompting urgent White House-level discussions and even considerations of relocating top officials amid fears of a targeted threat. Pentagon officials refused to comment on movements or security protocols, calling such disclosures irresponsible, even as the military ramped up surveillance and threat monitoring. The scare came against the backdrop of a wider security clampdown across the United States, with bases like MacDill Air Force Base, home to United States Central Command, facing lockdowns, suspicious package alerts, and shelter-in-place orders. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has pushed for a staggering $200 billion war funding package, far exceeding current operational costs to sustain and expand the military campaign against Iran. The proposal, driven by the need to replenish rapidly depleting precision munitions, has set the stage for a fierce showdown in Congress. While allies of Donald Trump signaled cautious backing, Democrats have raised sharp objections, questioning both the scale and necessity of the expenditure.
A major security scare for U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth amid the ongoing war with Iran. A U.S. military base went under lockdown after unidentified drones were detected over the facility, according to a March 18 Washington Post report citing 3 people briefed on the situation. The drones were spotted over Fort Leslie J. McNair in Washington, the same military installation where Rubio and Hegseth reside. U.S. officials have not yet determined the drone's origin, but the incident prompted discussions about potentially relocating both officials. The report said multiple drones were observed on a single night within the past 10 days, triggering an emergency White House meeting and raising serious security concerns. However, both top officials ultimately remained at the base, according to a senior administration official. Chief Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell told The Washington Post, "The department cannot comment on the secretary's movements for security reasons, and reporting on such movements is grossly irresponsible." Notably, the Pentagon and the U.S. State Department have not yet issued an official response to the report. U.S. investigators have been unable to determine the drone's origin. The incident is being treated with heightened urgency given the current security environment, with the U.S. and Israel engaged in conflict with Iran. The drone episode at Fort McNair is not an isolated case. Earlier, Joint Base McGuire-Dix Lakehurst in New Jersey and MacDill Air Force Base in Florida both raised their force protection level to Charlie, the second highest designation, indicating intelligence suggesting a possible threat or attack. MacDill, which serves as the headquarters of U.S. Central Command and oversees American military operations against Iran, has faced 2 separate security incidents this week alone. An FBI investigation is underway after a suspicious package forced the shutdown of the base's visitor center for several hours on Monday. U.S. officials say similar drone threats have emerged around President Donald Trump and other senior leaders in recent years, linked to Iran's retaliation plans following the 2020 killing of General Qasem Soleimani. The State Department has also ordered all U.S. diplomatic posts worldwide to conduct immediate security reviews. A cable reviewed by The Washington Post cited the ongoing and developing situation in the Middle East and the potential for spillover effects as the reason for the directive.
Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is declaring a turning point in its war against the United States and Israel. In a bold and sweeping claim, the IRGC says it has targeted every U.S. base across the region, signaling a dangerous expansion of the conflict. Tehran also claims its forces struck key Israeli military sites, escalating the confrontation to an unprecedented level. According to official IRGC statements, waves of drones slammed into targets across Akka, Haifa, Tel Aviv, and Beersheba, strikes they say hit with precision. In a striking assertion, Iran claims Israeli warning systems failed, sirens silent, defenses caught off guard as drones and missiles closed in.
Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence of the United States, has issued a stark warning on rising global security threats, naming Russia, China, North Korea and Pakistan as the most significant nuclear threats faced by the United States. The statement comes after Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif actually praised Donald Trump as a man of peace and savior of South Asia, reviving disputed ceasefire claims involving India at the Board of Peace Summit in Washington in the month of February. In her assessment, Tulsi Gabbard told lawmakers that the U.S. intelligence community expects a sharp increase in the number of missiles capable of striking the United States, projecting the figure to exceed 16,000 by 2035, up from the current estimate of around 3,000. Highlighting evolving geopolitical alignments, she noted that North Korea is strengthening its partnerships with Russia and China, raising concerns over coordinated military capabilities among U.S. adversaries.
U.S. Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard, presenting the intelligence community's 2026 Annual Threat Assessment, said that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran and Pakistan are the most significant nuclear threats to the United States. While testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee, Gabbard notably referred to Pakistan as a threat but did not mention India. Speaking about Pakistan, she told lawmakers that the Islamic Republic's long-range ballistic missile development potentially could include ICBMs with the range capable of striking the United States.
Meanwhile, state actors present a risk broader in scope by seeking new capabilities in kinetic and cyber warfare. The United States' secure nuclear deterrent continues to ensure safety in the homeland against strategic threats. However, the intelligence community assesses that Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and Pakistan have been researching and developing an array of novel, advanced, or traditional missile delivery systems with nuclear and conventional payloads that put our homeland within range. The IC assesses that threats to the homeland will expand collectively to more than 16,000 missiles by 2035, from the current assessed figure of more than 3,000 missiles. The IC assesses that China and Russia are developing advanced delivery systems meant to be capable of penetrating or bypassing U.S. missile defenses. North Korea's ICBMs can already reach U.S. soil, and the IC assesses that it is committed to expanding its nuclear arsenal. Pakistan's long-range ballistic missile development potentially could include ICBMs with the range capable of striking the homeland.
US Intel chief's statement comes even after Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif praised Donald Trump as a man of peace and savior of South Asia, reviving disputed ceasefire claims involving India at the Board of Peace Summit in Washington earlier in February.
Mr. President, we deeply appreciate your unique initiative and your dynamic leadership in advancing peaceful solutions to conflicts across the globe. Your bold diplomacy has surely brought calm to many international serious hotspots. Your timely and very effective intervention to achieve ceasefire between India and Pakistan potentially averted loss of tens of millions of people. You have truly proved to be a man of peace. And let me say, Mr. President, you are truly savior of South Asia.
And now, Director of National Intelligence of the United States, Tulsi Gabbard, mentioned Pakistan as one of the most significant nuclear threats faced by the United States. Gabbard also identified Al-Qaeda and ISIS as significant and enduring threats to US interests abroad, with both groups maintaining a dangerous presence across parts of Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia.
The West Asia war has brought nothing but bad news for the stock markets since the beginning. After days of bloodbath, a fresh wave of selling hit the Lal Street today, with the Sensex plunging over 2,500 points as oil prices surged and concerns around HDFC Bank unsettled investors. This is the worst market crash since the Iran-Israel-US war started last month, and that has meant investors lost 14 lakh crore rupees just today, as the market slid over 3% in a broad-based sell-off. The sell-off was driven by a mix of global and domestic triggers that hit market sentiment. Crude oil prices have surged past $115 a barrel after escalating tensions in the Middle East, raising fears of prolonged disruption. At the same time, developments at HDFC Bank have added to investor nervousness. In a sudden move, HDFC Bank's chairman and independent director Atanu Chakraborty resigned with immediate effect on Wednesday, citing ethical concerns. In his resignation letter, Chakraborty said, "Certain happenings and practices within the bank that I have observed over the last 2 years are not in congruence with my personal values and ethics." But the biggest trigger for the markets was the sudden spike in crude oil prices. India, which imports a large part of its oil needs, is particularly vulnerable to rising crude. Higher oil prices can push up inflation, weaken the rupee, and hit corporate margins, putting pressure across sectors. The latest escalation in the Middle East after Israel struck a key LNG facility in Iran has amplified these concerns, with investors worried that crude could remain elevated if tensions persist. Markets are likely to remain volatile in the near term as elevated crude oil prices and escalating geopolitical tensions continue to weigh on investor sentiment. If tensions persist and crude stays elevated, markets could remain under pressure. However, any signs of de-escalation could trigger a sharp rebound, given the current fall is largely driven by global cues and sentiment. That's all the time we have on this edition of Headlines at 8. Thanks so much for watching. Do join us again at the same time tomorrow.